everyone should feel free to jump in. So good morning, good evening, good wee hours of the morning, depending upon where you're at. My name is Justin Daniels. I'm a member of Mackrell. I've been participating in this AI group since last year. And I'm going to ask a small favor of everybody today. I didn't bring a PowerPoint today. I've done it before. I'm sure you've seen a whole bunch of them, and they serve their purpose. But with artificial intelligence, what I'm going to ask you to do today is we're going to get our hands a little bit dirty. What I would like to do today is last night I went and I did 3 or 4 prompts of different use cases that I wanted to show you, get your input on as we evaluate them on how much risk we think they have, what kind of issues they present, to make this more of a working session. And I'll show you how I did it. And maybe for some of you, this will be pretty basic. Maybe for others of you, it's something new to learn. But what I want to do with this is I'm kind of inviting you to comment and give me your thoughts. And I'm looking to more facilitate a session to get your thoughts so we can all work together than for me to sit here and talk to all of you, because I think we can all learn a lot more if we look at some use cases, have some input. And so that's what I've done for you this morning. And what I want to do is in the chat, because where is the chat? Here we go. I just wanted to share something with you that I thought you might find highly valuable. This is probably the best presentation that I have seen about the potential ramifications of AI. I don't know if you've ever seen the Social Dilemma documentary that was put on. So one of the people behind that, Tristan Harris, put together this hour-long video about AI. And if you're in your car and you can plug in and you can just listen to it, I highly recommend it. So with that being said, and we've got our ground rules, and I may even call on a few people. Maybe I'll pick on Marcus and Harold first. What I am going to do is, let's see, share a screen. Oh, so my host disabled participant screen sharing. So, Harold, is there a way to get me that I can share my screen?
Keith is the host, and he's giving us a thumbs up.
Okay,
I know you're trouble, Justin, so I thought I'd better just, have that little bit of control, but you should be all systems go now.
Fabulous. All right. So, all right. Can everybody see the screen? There we
see nothing.
All right, we see nothing. All right, do you see a screen now that looks like Anthropic?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, do I need to blow it up or can you see it?
Blow it up a little bit.
All right, I'll blow it up a little bit. Get rid of that for now. All right, let's see. All right. I think this is as much as I can blow it up, but let me read this to you. So what I want to do is, again, I've created a couple chats, and I've used Anthropic's AI, and I've also used ChatGPT. So here's the first one. And last night I was out on LinkedIn, and a friend of mine was part of a group that wrote a post around how AI is making life more interesting. So here is a prompt that I put together. And so a use case for AI that I want you all to evaluate is, what's the hardest part of being a lawyer if you're in private practice, if you're not in-house? Is it doing the work or marketing to get the work? Marketing to get the work, in my opinion. And so what I wanted to show you is, I took this article and I said, you are a LinkedIn post writer. You noticed I'm giving the AI a perspective to take, a persona to take on. Please create for me a 750-word post with emojis and 7 bullet points that are 10 to 12-word sentences summarizing the attached article with a fun and insightful hook to grab the reader's attention. Your audience is a business executives and general counsel. And so I typed that in, and about 10 seconds later, this is what came up. AI maketh life more complicated. And so if you take a look at this, you see all the emojis. This is kind of what the LinkedIn algorithm likes. And so I want to open it up and ask a question. So, Harold, as you look at this, from a legal perspective, what do you think your initial reaction to this is with the level of risk if I were going to use AI to help me become better at posting relevant, interesting content on LinkedIn at more at constant intervals so that I'm building up my marketing presence on that platform?
If you read it first, I think your
Sure.
risk is zero.
Right. Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts? What if a client wanted to do this and they have an AI policy? What kind of guardrails would we suggest putting around a use case like this? Keith, I'm going to pick on you. What are your thoughts around that? If a client wanted to as a use case, because in my opinion, I'm advising clients, let's think big, but start small, because if you mess this up, what social media is a post today, gone tomorrow. Now you're on to something else.
See, what I would do here is I would straight away go and consult my lawyer.
Okay.
And I would go to Harold and say, Harold, I've come up with an idea. I've got this prompt. I want to put it out into the world. Where do you think my risks are? What would you say,
That's
Harold?
it. You're free and clear. You're free and clear. Just run with it.
Could I have that in writing?
Not feeling not feeling litigious right now, but
I mean, clearly context is the most important thing. If you're putting something out, I mean, I haven't read this from top to bottom, but essentially you were talking, Justin, about marketing yourself. If you are in a jurisdiction where you can market yourself, because many jurisdictions can't, but then you can take a smart approach and not position any content as marketing. You can position it as information for a client. So it's just about using the guardrails you have already within your jurisdiction and putting something out to the world that says, here is some extremely useful information about doing business with our law firm, with me as your lawyer, blah, 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 blah. Then check it through for inaccuracies and put it out into the world.
Now, Keith, I noticed you said something very interesting there is, if you notice how I wrote this, it was just putting out information. It wasn't me touting something about myself, but what's implied is, oh, if this person is talking about AI, they might know something about it. But one of the guardrails I would have for this is you have to assume with some companies, somebody might have the AI write it and they don't really read it or fact check it with the article. That might be one thing that I do, because if you were a company and they could fact check it, then that could go to a credibility issue. But for the most part, I would view this as a pretty low risk use case, and one where you could put some simple guardrails around it and get a client to start learning how to do this. Because one of the things you've been seeing or reading about is AI is going to take away a lot of jobs. And I think one of the things to learn here is one of the jobs that you're going to have is becoming what's called a prompt engineer. And what a prompt engineer is how you prompt ChatGPT or whatever AI it is to give you the kind of information that you're looking for. So just to show you, I read this thing and the phishing frenzy, the sales spam saga, I'm like, all right, maybe that's a little bit too out there for the audience. Although if you get to know me, I'm pretty out there anyway. So I said, you know what, can your writing style be more traditional and educational? And then you get a very different post from ChatGPT. I'm sorry, from Anthropic. And then I asked to revise it yet again. So I wanted to start out with a pretty simple use case for you guys to see. And this is using Anthropic. And one of the things I like about Anthropic is they make it incredibly easy to upload a document. They have a button where you click, and then you can upload the document, and then you write your prompt, and it will review the document. So now what I wanted to do is, we're going up the theme a little bit, is here's another one that I did last night I wanted to show you is I went out on the internet and I don't know how many of you ever shop there, but has anyone here ever bought a Brooks Brothers shirt or blouse or anything like that? You may have. So now what I wanted to show you is I downloaded the Brooks Brothers privacy policy, which is a open source document. And I said, you are a 5th-year associate at a law firm. You must review this privacy policy and identify significant risk, which is flagged as red, intermediate risk, which is flagged as yellow, and low risk flagged as green. You must use step-by-step deductive reasoning to provide a rationale for each risk and why you characterized it as a red, yellow, or green risk. The format of your document will be in a bullet point summary memo separated by red, yellow, and green. So here's what I wanted to show you. So here's the memo. And the AI went through the policy that I put on there, open source, available to everybody. And it highlighted what it thought significant risks were. Collection and use of sensitive biometric data without adequate justification or safeguards. And then some of the rationale was biometric data is considered sensitive personal information that requires heightened protection. 2, the policy does not explain why this data is needed or how it would be secured, raising risk of misuse or breach. So I want to throw it out there to the group. Marcus or Nicholas or Tim, I'd love to get your input. What level of a coronary do you have when someone's saying, I'm going to review a privacy policy using AI? Because I asked it to be as if it were my 5th-year associate, and this is what it spat out. What is your initial reaction to, would you do this? And if you would do it, what kind of guardrails would you put around this if you were outside counsel or in-house lawyer looking to leverage additional resources? Because there always seems to be a lot more work than people to do it. So I'd love to get your feedback or thoughts.
This is Nick. So I don't have an issue with using this as a preliminary kind of source, but I think, as Keith mentioned, anything that comes back would need to be reviewed by a lawyer in detail and basically cross-referenced. I think an independent review would also be necessary. You can't just rely on the AI picking out all of the potential risks. I think this is good for kind of high level, but I don't think it will replace a lawyer doing its his or her own independent review. And I would never trust this outright. I think that's the big guardrail that I would put in place.
So Nick, you make a great point that I want to broaden up for everybody. So companies who put together AI policies, or if you're asked to write them, one glaring weakness that I see in them consistently is how do they deal with at what intervals and how often you have human intervention? Because that's essentially what Nick is saying is like, I'm not going to just let this thing write it and not review it or independent review, because we all know that it hallucinates. And so I wanted to show you here and to support Nick's point is, how are you putting guardrails around the intervals for human intervention and how often it's done and the method in which it's done? I presume, Nick, is it fair to say you would read this memo, you would read the policy as if this were an associate and you had to go and look at the stuff yourself? They give you a helpful outline, but you're still going to review it and not just rely on it.
Say with the caveat, with an associate, if you build a relationship and been working with someone long enough, you may develop a certain level of trust where you don't have to fly spec it as in as much detail. But with AI, I certainly think you still need to do the full review.
So I guess an interesting question I have for the group, Nick, please lead us in this discussion, is, in your mind, with what you know now, what would it take for you to develop that level of trust with AI that you might develop with an associate who you work with for months and you really start to get a lot of confidence in the quality of their work product? Do you ever get there? How long would it take? Terrible question. What are your thoughts about that?
I think the big issue with implementing AI, I guess it might not be too different from an actual associate. So someone who starts out as a first-year associate, it's going to take how many assignments, how many months, years to develop that level of trust. And then you can start using that associate for bigger projects and broadening that level of trust. I think it'd be similar with AI. So at first, there would be essentially no trust. You use it as an initial resource. But as you know, you're doing your review and are finding that it's not missing things, it's not hallucinating, that level of trust is going to grow over time. I don't know what that time frame is or how many assignments it would take, so to speak, but I think it's just a trial and error. And once that error rate is low enough that you feel confident that you don't have to do the total review, but of course that might expose you to some form of liability, I'm sure.
Surely it depends on, it also depends on the work that you're asking the associate or AI to do.
Agreed. Like, for
In some sense,
example,
we never ask our associates to do work that we couldn't do ourselves. So, I mean, if you're asking an associate to do work that you couldn't do, you can't evaluate it. But I did want to add one thing that's a tip and also directly to the question of how much time. The Professor Ethan Mollick, who I've recommended several times from the Wharton School of Business, was just on the podcast with Ezra Klein today. And he went through a lot of these prompting tips, and it would be a great additional resource after we finish this session. But in that podcast, he used the benchmark of 10 hours to really try to understand the personality of one of the systems. And of course, he said 10 hours is a ridiculously arbitrary number, but it jives with me. I think 10 hours is a good amount of time to spend with the system before you kind of get a sense of where it always makes mistakes and where it rarely makes mistakes.
because I guess the question I have for all of us would be, would your view change if you got one of these LLMs and then you trained it on data specific to your law firm, like the memos that get created and the knowledge that your organization has created as what they would call learning reinforcement to train it specifically on tasks that your law firm performs? How, if at all, might that change your analysis? Because it's important, because you have training data from the LLM, but then you have to do specific training for a task. And I'm going to show you something in ChatGPT in a moment, but how does that change your analysis, or what steps might you take? Because this is important, I think, when clients come to you and they want to use this and they haven't quite thought through how an LLM actually works if you want it to do a specific task. Anybody have some thoughts on that? I'm happy to call on some more folks to add you to the discussion. Tim, do you have a thought on that? I'd love to hear your perspective so you don't have to listen to me talk.
I think that the using your own data clearly, I mean, you're giving it reliability that from sources that you know, and hopefully memos that are correct.
Yeah.
And the more that we do that, and this goes to the whole question of, training, using an LLM, training it on your own data versus outside data. There would come a point, if you're a subject matter expert or your firm is, that would be, I'd give a lot more trust to it. Then it's just a matter of whether the logical tree is working inside the algorithms.
That's a great point. And then the other question I have for our group is, in your due diligence, how would you feel as attorneys if they're saying, no, we want to take the information you give us and we want to teach our model on it so it gets better? Because now we have to figure out, okay, well, we have confidentiality obligations to our clients in many jurisdictions. So how does that work? Because if you look at Copilot, they tell you their enterprise version does not train on your data. So what are your thoughts around that? Because again, this is another area where clients may not be thinking it all the way through when they come to us with different questions. Harold, what are your thoughts on that?
Which?
So Tim brings up a great point. If it has your law firm's data, it's able to train better on that. But then you have to think about going through the diligence process and making clear, is the LLM actually training on your law firm data so that it in general gets better? Because that raises other issues.
Yeah, there's three kind of levels of using data. The bottom level is the base models, and it takes billions of words to train a base model. So I don't have enough data. Nobody has enough. No law firm has enough data for that. And then the fine tuning on top of that, you could do fine tuning in your law firm I think it would cost more than it's worth though. You'd probably have to hire an extra person at Silicon Valley rates. Maybe Tim doesn't mind, but I don't think it'd be worth it necessarily to hire someone for our law firm to enter all the data in. And I don't know that our firm's data is substantially more reliable. I might just have a more higher certainty that it's wrong in specific places.
Okay.
But and then the third workplace you can put the data is into the context window. Like you can, if you wanted to, before you asked it questions, you could throw a bunch of your own firm's contracts into the window and then say, do it like the previous contracts I just showed you. And that could be a good way to get this kind of style of your firm. And you don't have to do very much to just throw a bunch of contract examples at it. The windows are getting really, really huge. So pretty soon we'll be able to throw textbooks at it and then ask it questions, or throw a textbook at it and then throw a complaint or something from somewhere, or a PDF or something, and then ask it questions related to both the question that you asked it and the textbook, which would be much more efficient. In terms of like the data, like the data privacy, we can also kind of foresee the ability to use these models on our own servers, which would be great. I'd love to just keep all of the stuff right on our own servers, not trained on our own data, but take the data that OpenAI, for example, used, take the models that OpenAI used, and get them right on your laptop even. The newest ones from Claude, the Claude Haiku can run on a desktop, as far as I recall.
Yeah. Good point. So I wanted to take all of you to the next use case that I wanted to show you. In a way, it's like right out of the news. You might have seen that two financial advisors are being, the SEC is going after them for what they call AI washing, inflating the claims of what AI can do for their financial model. And so what I wanted to show you is, here's another one. And now I've switched over to ChatGPT. Can everyone see this? Okay. So one of the things you can do in ChatGPT now is, remember how I was talking about learning reinforcement? Well, now they've created GPTs that do specific things. So I wanted to bring up the finance wizard. So I went to the finance wizard, who obviously is dealing in finance. And so I prompted it. You are a stock analyst. I am looking for a healthcare stock to diversify my portfolio, which is heavily weighted in technology and oil and gas sector. The stock should have a beta of less than 0.7 and a growth rate over the last year of over 80% cumulative. Please provide 5 choices and rationale with each one using the efficient portfolio method. And what I wanted to show you here is it couldn't get there. It says, please hold while I perform the analysis. And I said, are you still evaluating the stocks? And then it says it talked to gps.webpilot.ai, and I had to ask it what it was doing. It was actually querying the internet to go out to Yahoo Finance to find something. And so now it says it went to Yahoo Finance, still not quite getting there. And then finally, I prompted it again. Can you just give me 5 healthcare stocks with a rationale for each one, where I want to add a healthcare to a portfolio that's overweighted? And now it came up with 5. Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, United Healthcare, AbbVie, Merck. So now my question becomes to all of you. A client comes to you and they have something like this where they want to use AI-enabled stock advising. What's your reaction to that? How many ibuprofens do you need to take when someone brings something like this to you? Harold, you're smirking at me. I guess if we could throw a metaphorical tomato at me, you would.
Because I was glad I got the easy question earlier.
Bill, I haven't had an opportunity to collaborate with you. Do you have any thoughts for us?
Yeah, this would be all kinds of problems. Because you're going outside of where you can even begin to confirm any of the stuff that you're using. So the first thing would be just don't do it. And then the second thing would be, if you want to do it, you need to do a lot more work. This is not something where you can just ask it questions. It's not a genie. You can't just ask it questions and expect it to go outside of wherever it's getting the knowledge, and you don't know where it's getting knowledge. Like it's all it's doing is sort of summarizing the knowledge of the internet. So I mean, you might as well just Google stock picks.
So I have a different question for all. Go ahead, Bill. You
I
want to
was
say
just-
something?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I was
please.
just, gonna in all of these cases, I assume that as part of your prompt, you can ask it to list all sources.
Yes, you
Yeah.
could.
And
Well, you can't really because it's not directly pulling sources. It's not
So
a
what?
it's not like a calculator with a personality that's drawing things out. You can ask it to go get sources and it'll make stuff up, but and
I
sometimes
asked it to go to
I guess that's and going all the way back to the earlier question of, what point can you turn your work over and maybe not do the full check on it? It seems like ultimately law firms are responsible for anything that's produced regardless, but can you request primary sources or any direct citation to sources?
So I can show you what I did. If it comes up, I asked it to go to Morningstar.
Got it. Okay.
So to Harold's point, I asked it to do that, but even if it goes there, my view
And
is the
may
reason I
not be
brought this one
valid.
up is the closer you get to cases like finance. I mean, if you think about blockchain, they decided they were going to change the world in finance, one of the hardest industry, most heavily regulated. Like if you were to do this with healthcare with, hey, Claude, can you read this x-ray of my daughter and tell me what you see? The moment they come in with use cases around some of these other industries, at least in my view, my red flag is going off.
Yeah.
Because let me contrast this. So the other thing I said is, hey, what if I wanted to have a travel agency where I'm trying to give people a very bespoke custom experience? Well, I asked ChatGPT, can you create a detailed prompt to provide me a great itinerary for a weekend in Rome and a cruise that leaves from Rome on Monday, returning Monday? And it gives you some pretty detailed ideas. So this idea strikes me, if someone has a bad vacation or goes to a restaurant they don't like, they may not be mad, but if you have a ChatGPT that's trying to give people stock advice, the whole level of risk that you have, to me, is just very different.
So in some ways, it comes back to Harold's point about not giving an associate work that you couldn't do yourself. If it's something that you can review and that you have a level of expertise and comfort zone in, then work with it, test it, trial it, push it, review it. If it's outside of that, you've got no ability to review it or verify it. But if it's something like a holiday itinerary, well, you'll live. If it's something more critical, then don't touch it.
And Keith, let me give you guys a great example. Can everyone see my screen? I'm going to show you something that I looked at a while back. Goes to your point. So I had a client in the middle of a deal, or we're negotiating an LOI, and the deal terms changed to where the acquirer doesn't want to acquire the entire company. They want us to be a minority owner. And the client's like, I got to get on a call with this person. What are the issues that I have to think about? So here's a prompt you could do. As a minority owner of a company, you would likely want, prompt about, if I'm a minority shareholder, what are my concerns? And I wanted basically an associate to write it up, but this was faster. So here, I'm a corporate lawyer, and here it came up with 11 different things. So then what you do is you read all this, and then it's a very helpful summary. And because that's my expertise, I could read this and pretty much figure out what to include and what not to include. But here's the thing. This happened in 30 seconds, and I was able to turn it around very quickly, as opposed to having to go to an associate who may or may not be busy. But I could read this and pretty much quickly summarize if this was correct or not. Had it been something around antitrust, I'd be way out of my league and I would hesitate to rely on it. Another thing I've seen done is creating interrogatories for a litigation. Or another thing is, and I'll show you this one, I thought you'd find this one interesting, is I had OpenAI. How many people on this call have ever had to negotiate a contract where the issue is gross negligence versus negligence, where the consequence could be a data breach? And one of the things I like to do with clients is prepare what I call an accusation audit. What do we expect them to say? What are their objections going to be? So we game plan how to tackle that. And here was ChatGPT coming up with a way to have a discussion and what the counterpoints might be to assist in that negotiation preparation. And again, are you revealing any specific client information? No, you don't say what industry it is, what client is. You're just saying, here's a general issue that I have, and this is what it comes up with. But again, Harold's point, this is an area where I feel very comfortable. If it were an area where I didn't, I'd have serious concerns about relying on this, and I'd want to go and fact check and whatnot. But for stuff that you're already well versed in, this can be helpful.
We did a very similar thing today. I was presenting in front of a bunch of business people.
Yeah.
And I needed to. We were going through the draft USAI Act, and I needed to distinguish for them the difference between civil liability and criminal liability because it's not obvious to everyone. And I needed to just get the factors of a tort, and I know the factors of tort, but I asked it for a brief explanation of strict liability and a brief explanation of product liability, but then I just asked it, did I forget anything? Which is a really helpful phrase. Did I forget anything? Because then it said, oh yeah, you forgot negligence per se, which is just a nice thing to add on to the little presentation. So it can go outside what you know in the moment, as long as you can recognize that it's not making stuff up.
And doing a presentation, you have a lot less at risk than if somebody files a brief where you have to check every citation to make sure that ChatGPT isn't making stuff up, because it lies rather convincingly. And that's why it's very important when we're writing AI policies or we're using this stuff that we have really thought through what human intervention looks like based on the use case and the risk.
So I'm starting to see, Justin,
Yes.
some articles popping up on Mondac, on LinkedIn, and a couple of other places. and this was inevitable. Why you should use a real human lawyer rather than AI.
Mhm.
And so it's the legal profession and attorneys sort of saying, wait a minute, look where it could all go wrong. This is why we still exist. This is why you need human beings. And on one of them, and I wish I'd kept the link at the bottom, they put a little disclaimer saying partly written by ChatGPT. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant use on a number of different levels. One, actually, I'm going to create this post. It's important. I'm going to go out and create the bulk of it, but then I'm actually going to weave in the human element to justify why humanity is important when dealing. And this was specifically to do with trust and estate. And I thought that is the sort of the perfect use in some ways of AI, and actually really sort of zeitgeisty.
How are we going to answer that? Did you get involved in any discussions over any of that as well?
I'm sorry, Chris, could you repeat your comment? I had a little trouble hearing you. Okay. So I guess I wanted to open up a question to the group. From your experience, at least either using it or advising clients on AI, are there any other areas where you have found AI to be helpful, or any kind of blind spots that you would like to share. The only way I can think to tell you how to get comfortable with this is you just start using it and you learn how to be a good prompt engineer and you give it examples. And like, for example, I had the new state of Georgia where I am, they were looking at a privacy law. So I created a PDF of it and I said, hey, ChatGPT, can you summarize this law with the salient points and whatever? And it did it. I read the law, but at least it gave me a summary that I could work from, and it wasn't passed yet. So I felt like it was a pretty good use of ChatGPT to save me some time or help me figure out what the main points were. But would I ever give that client to a memo without really going through it and whatnot? Not on your life.
You might assign an associate to make a fresh draft, just like you might use ChatGPT the same way.
In effect, that's what you're doing. Or think about writing a law review article or an article for, like, for example, I had to write an article about what we could learn from blockchain, what happened in the last couple of years with regulation and bad events. And I was like, I wanted to research a little bit about what happened with the Securities and Exchange Act after the Great Depression. I wanted to research what happened with Dodd-Frank after the crisis in 2008, because I knew those were analogies. So I was putting together an article, but having ChatGPT help me do the research, and then it came up with some thoughts. But then I went and researched and fact-checked that because that was an article with my name, but I was the one giving it the ideas. And it really helped me come up with thoughts faster than if I had to do a bunch of research looking on LinkedIn with a bunch of articles. Syed, do you have a comment? Love to hear from you. What are you thinking? He's walking around. Anybody else have any thoughts that they have? Those were the use cases I wanted to share with you. If you have any questions about prompt engineering and some of the other things to put together, I'm happy to answer them, or just, what are your thoughts around how you may start using this in the next 3 to 6 months? Because with a lot of the regulation around, the EUA Act won't be enforced for a while, although I think the FTC is going to be a regulator you have to watch. I also think the SEC is a regulator you're going to have to watch. That's just a US perspective, but I'd love, because we're an international group, what the thoughts are around some of the EU regulators or other regulators in Asia. Any thoughts around those folks that we might have to worry about in this immediate time period? Because the regulation here is really lagging. Or let me ask you another question. Or Dallas, do you have a thought there?
Yeah, Justin, I had a question. I know we've been talking about kind of more internal use and kind of the generative AI in this sense, but the one thing that keeps coming up that I keep having to deal with is clients adding the AI bots into meetings like this, where they don't have good terms. So for instance, Zoom got kind of slapped on the wrist by the community, and they added an express one sentence: we absolutely do not use your data captured with the AI to train our systems or third-party systems. And so I was just curious what people are doing in those situations, because I use ChatGPT and Claude and a couple other things occasionally we have access to for ideation and summaries and some of the stuff that you've talked about. But that's the allowing these bots into meetings is the one I've been struggling with. And clients don't like it when I just blanketly say, let's kick them out.
Well, Dallas, once you start getting into meetings with video, and sometimes meetings go in unexpected directions, it sounds to me like the best you can do is apprise them of the risk, which is, once these AI language models have trained on all the data they can scrape off the internet, the next place to go is to take all of these meetings we're having, like today, and translate them to text and then learn off of them, because you can learn a ton from this meeting, from how we talk, how we put sentences together. And then the question I'm going to have is, you may have, would be, well, what happens if something unexpected and unanticipated comes because you're using an AI bot that, I don't know, somebody has an epileptic seizure in the meeting and somehow that's broadcast, or they're training on certain data. That's, to me, where I see the FTC coming in to say, hey, you've engaged in an unfair and deceptive trade practice, because that definition is so broad.
Yeah.
But I think the tough part is clients only see the benefit. They don't want to see the risk until somebody goes off the rails and they get whacked by a regulator or they get the pantsuit off them. Otherwise, I find it from yes, Harold.
I think Dallas, you might also have confidentiality problems that you could advise the client of.
Yeah,
said-
so I mean, I have a whole list because again, it's confidentiality. It's is this now creating a discoverable problem? You know, from an ethical perspective, if we've looked at examples today of where it doesn't do a great job summarizing things. So if it summarizes what I said in a way that's like misinterprets what I've said, like now do I have risk because a client relies on a flawed interpretation of or summary of the meeting? I don't think I do, but just one of the things that I thought
And
about.
I've seen some pretty flawed summaries because of the speech can be blurred. Yeah, I'd say kick it out. There's no
Yeah.
At this point, there's no safety in the summaries for sure. That's a really
Yeah.
valid concern.
Yeah.
Or
so
you'll have
I
to have a
mean-
disclaimer that says, hey, if you use this, you can't rely on the summary that's created because it could be
Flawed.
it could be flawed. It's almost like you'd have to put a disclaimer on there so they can't come back and say you gave bad legal advice. No, you listened to a translation of what I said through a
Not what I
bot that
said.
didn't do it accurately.
Yeah.
Heck, ChatGPT would even help you create it, but I would
Yeah.
probably put something like that together.
Yeah,
You need a
'cause I think
disclaimer on your disclaimer there, Justin.
Yeah, disclaimer on my disclaimer. Yeah, so I mean, just like as a firm, because
Yeah.
I'm leading up kind of this charge on policy writing and stuff, and
Yeah.
so just I don't think that my colleagues particularly care for my cautious approach to certain things. But I'm also licensed in California, where we do have a very specific set of guidelines from the bar where they've said what we should be concerned about. To your point, Justin, like it is an ethical concern if privilege is lost and I didn't explain to the client that, hey, making this public and letting somebody else use it without appropriate guardrails and policies for that service, puts your privilege at risk. So
Those are excellent points, Dallas. If you wouldn't mind, if you could share any of the summary of the information, I'd love to learn more. Like I said, I think the value of a group. Yes.
I would
Yeah.
love to contribute a few things and need to ask a few things
Sure.
as well.
Sure, please.
Well, according to me, as I have a IT background, so I believe that privacy is a myth nowadays. You can't do anything about it, and they'll snatch your information anyway, whether from your cell phone or there are a lot of things. So, anyways. So the thing is that I'm using AI models in the daily routine a lot of times, and most of the time, what I do is like I use a few websites which are known to humanize the text. So once you develop something on ChatGPT or something or any AI model, it gives you with a lot of difficult jargons or difficult vocabularies, not easily understandable for some people, so you can always go on some website. There are a couple of websites you can humanize the text so it can be easily understandable by anyone. And I'm also using a few things, a few AI tools for the business development stuff. Do you recommend anything regarding that? Do you have anything regarding that? Thank you.
Sure. So Said, can you repeat? So the issue is around recommendations around government. I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
Which part actually?
The last part that had your question.
All right. So I was asking about the BD tools, business development tools. Do you have any? Because I'm using a couple of BD tools for
Okay.
the automation and AI stuff,
Yeah.
to generate leads or to connect with the right clients or something like that.
Oh, those I haven't used. I've mostly used artificial intelligence around content and whatnot. Does anyone else have an opinion on those kinds of tools that are really around lead gen and reaching out and that kind of thing?
I mean, other than using blog post stuff, I haven't used it to outreach, but I mean, If you go on LinkedIn, I get probably 100 sham emails or requests a day, and so you can tell and feel it. And I think that's probably the biggest thing is using this stuff to, like you said, to humanize the outputs, because that's the biggest problem, is it just like wastes people's time, I think, if it's not good.
I mean, I'll ask the group a question. Would anyone find it helpful if I show you in ChatGPT where they have context windows that can mimic your writing style? If you download stuff and you make ChatGPT sound more like, your writing style and your persona, or are people pretty familiar with that? Honestly, I learned it in a YouTube video. I have a degree, summa cum laude, from YouTube University. There's so much you can learn by watching videos. Okay. So what do we have, what, about 12 minutes left, Harold? Yes?
Sorry, yeah, I think that would be helpful because I don't know that
Okay.
I've messed around with that.
Okay, well, here, let
You
me,
mean
And that
me go
might
back to-
address sites.
you mean the customized ChatGPT window?
yeah, I'm gonna share my screen again. I'll just show everybody. So let's see, ChatGPT. So if you go down here, I think where my, so let's see. So if you see this, you go down to where my name is. Just so you know, I splurged for the
You're still
20 bucks.
showing Claude.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm showing Claude. Okay. There. You seeing it now?
Not yet.
All right, hold on. I'll try this again. There we go. There you go. See it now?
No.
ChatGPT.
There it is.
There we go. Okay. So if you go down to the
now we
bottom.
can see it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm a technology lawyer who sometimes struggles with technology. So if you go to the bottom left corner where it has my name, since I splurged to get the 20 bucks a month to get the better. So you click that and then click that. You see where it says customize ChatGPT. I'm clicking on it. So you can give it custom instructions. So I could put in there, hey, I'm an attorney, or hey, I'm whatever. And then how would you like ChatGPT to respond? ChatGPT, I want you to let me know if you're unsure of an answer. Trying to cut down on hallucinations. We'll see. And then I gave it a writing sample so it could see how I write. And it takes that in consideration in every single response. So that's how you can start to customize ChatGPT. And it's enabled for new chats. So that's where that is.
I guess I didn't realize that it would use your writing style, because I have some of the stuff in there and had completed this when it first launched. So it's probably something I should look back at.
Yeah, or you can include other stuff, like I want it to tell me when it's not sure of an answer. So I've learned that, so I'm trying it out. Obviously, hallucinations being a big issue. And then the other thing I wanted to show you is you can explore the GPTs. So now it has learning reinforced GPTs that do particular things. Like, for example, you can have one that's dedicated to being a writer, a logo creation. There was one that'll even create a cartoon out of a picture. So I took one of my wife and I, since we do a podcast together, I wasn't going to send it to her because it didn't look a lot like us, and so she was going to howl. So there you go, logo creator, cartoonize yourself. So these are some other things that you can take a look at. Productivity, PDFs. It's just amazing. Research. So enhance research with 200 million resources and critical reading skills. Programming. I don't know if you've done this, but I've actually created a PowerPoint where you could tell it to create the macro for you to copy into PowerPoint and create a slide deck for you. So I wanted to show you these whole bunches of particular GPTs, like here's Kayak. So maybe if I wanted to do another trip to Rhone, I'd do it under this particular GPT that's dedicated for travel. They have a couple of those. So just a couple more things. As I said, I've learned a ton by going on YouTube and just texting things and listening to videos about how to create prompts. I think the critical skill I want you to take from this meeting, if you want to use ChatGPT, is how well you give prompts. And the more examples that you can give it, they call it one or multi-shot inference. The more information you can give it, the more it crafts responses to what you're looking for, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I want to reiterate a couple of things that you've shown or demonstrated that people should really take seriously. The first one being to treat it like a personality, to say like, you are a LinkedIn blog writer, or there's been some pretty weird, especially if you listen to that blog or podcast that I mentioned earlier, um, there's some pretty weird personalities you can give it. Apparently, it does extremely well on math if you tell it that it's a Starfleet engineer. So experiment with the various personalities. Tell it that it's very good at what it's doing. Tell it that your job depends on it, all that kind of stuff. Um, Another thing that you were talking about was the few shot prompting. Give it a couple of examples of the question and the answer of other things.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And I think the one thing you didn't mention is the chain of thought prompting. So if you say, this is really probably the most effective thing, and I put this in all of the custom instructions. Make sure you tell it to think step by step, so that it can have an opportunity to have an inner monologue out loud, and then learn from its own monologue. That's a really, really, really helpful prompting tip.
I guess you could put those in the custom instructions for that one that you just spoke of, Harold.
Yeah, I actually stuck my custom instructions in the chat. And
Oh,
you can see
okay.
that it's really pedantic the way I've written it, because that apparently works.
Okay.
So you
Okay.
can see where I've written, you are very capable. You really can do this and are awesome. Take a deep breath and think this through. Think step by step. Don't be verbose. Yep.
You make an excellent point. But, well, I don't know that I have anything else. Again, I wanted to come at this a different way. I just didn't want to give you a PowerPoint. I wanted to go through some examples, give everyone a chance to interact, because I think this is one of those areas where we're all learning from each other, because at a minimum, I think this is highly disruptive to the way that lawyers deliver value. And the more that we understand the technology and we use it, I think it will help you when you're called on to give advice to clients, because I can't imagine you have no clients who are thinking about this. Every business in every industry is figuring out how are they going to leverage this. And a lot of them don't know what they don't know. And the more you understand how the tech works, I think you're going to give yourself an advantage to be looked at as a trusted advisor that they want to work with to help them navigate this.
Justin, Harold I know uses AI every day, several times a day. And I've seen it. How often do you use?
At this point, I'm probably using it every day because it helps me with marketing and whatnot. And even if it's not client specific, every day I'm getting better in understanding prompts, and I'm getting my reps in to really learn the technology. And in and of itself, I find to be very valuable. And that's why I think you just got to start using it. Don't worry about how much you do or don't know. We can all type into a prompt. It's no different than typing into a Word document. And that's why I highly encourage you, even if it's just to say, hey, I'd like to have a new workout routine, or how do I do this on a mountain bike? Just try simple things like that and see what it comes up with as a way to just start learning and getting yourself accustomed to it.
And have you had any client interactions where, I mean, Dallas talked about clients wanting to drop AI into Zoom calls, but what sort of client interactions have you had where a client has either been questioning you about their use of AI or your use of AI, or has said, well, we did this on AI, what do you think?
So a lot of I have not had a client question me with the use of AI, because I'm very conservative with it, meaning I won't put client confidential information. I won't put a document in it that has client information in it, because I'm very concerned about our ethical obligations. So where I typically am getting into it is clients will come to me, either they don't have a use case, they don't have an AI policy, they're thinking about it. And now you have to, kind of like we're doing today, start to get them to think holistically about what does an AI policy really mean? What does using AI in different use cases really mean? What are the legal, but also the ethical and business issues? And what I was trying to do today was just bring up use cases so you start to see and how your reasoning goes from a LinkedIn post to a financial, to a healthcare, to a travel post and how your views start to differ on what risks are posed by them, because it's got to be pretty clear that some companies aren't thinking about the risks. Otherwise, you wouldn't be seeing things in the news about car dealers selling Ford F-150s for $1 through their chat bot, or a Canadian refunding a ticket because it's what its chat bot did. So it begs the question, how did it get that far without this stuff being thought through? And I think we're going to see more.
It's an intern. Just keep saying that to your clients. It's an intern. Don't let your intern sell your trucks. Don't let your intern sell your airplane tickets.
That's right, but yet you see it. And so that's where I think you just have to be asking these questions to get clients to think about it, because then I think you're coming at them from a way where it's not intimidating, where you're not saying, well, we have this intellectual property and this privacy and security issue. Harold's way is better. Just like, hey, would you want an intern selling your Ford F-150 without any real supervision? I think that drives home the point a lot more effectively than talking about the particular legal risk. You can get there, but Harold's way is far more effective to get their attention, because there's a lot of reputational risk, I think, in this, amongst other ones. So anyway, well, I hope you enjoyed this today. It was very fun. I thought this was a different approach, and judging by the level of participation, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and actually learn from you.